This was an awkward encounter. The man had only secretly sketched the woman sitting opposite him, yet she unceremoniously opened the chocolate he had placed on the table and began enjoying it with ease. The man froze for a moment, feeling somewhat at a loss. To assert ownership over this unexpected guest, he broke off a piece of chocolate and placed it in his mouth, then shot her a meaningful glance. However, the woman paid no heed to his feelings. Instead, she broke off another piece of chocolate and placed it teasingly into her mouth. The man could only mask the turmoil within with a polite smile, gently pulling the chocolate closer to himself. Yet the woman seemed to see right through him. They looked at each other and smiled, both finding the other's behavior utterly amusing, while also marveling at their serendipitous connection and mutual understanding. The man intended to speak and break this silent contest, but the train reached its stop. The woman elegantly rose and left, carrying the lingering aroma of chocolate.
It's all yours.
Facing the man's kindness, the woman did not give the response he might have hoped for, but instead delivered a meaningful look back over her shoulder. Sometime later, Cameron was still basking in the memory of that laughter. It wasn't until he was ready to step off the train himself that he suddenly realized his identical chocolate bar remained completely untouched. In that moment, it dawned on him, realizing how utterly ridiculous he had just been. As if fate had already decreed it, not long after, Cameron unexpectedly encountered that woman once more. As soon as they met, he eagerly explained the misunderstanding from last time. The woman responded with a laugh. Cameron's embarrassment was palpable. To express his apology, he gifted her the portrait he had carefully drawn. This portrait was not only Cameron's way of making amends for his previous mistake, but it also revealed his admiration and affection for the woman. Then they looked at each other, smiled, and shook hands in reconciliation. But just as Cameron wanted to take things a step further, the train reached its stop. He could only bid the woman farewell with regret. Yet the moment he turned away, Cameron began to regret it. He blamed himself for not seizing the chance to ask for her contact information. Right at that moment, a familiar and gentle voice called out to him.
Here,
Oh no, that's for you. Keep it.
give it to me again.
Okay.
Facing the woman's tender smile, Cameron felt a wave of confusion rise within him. But when he turned over the portrait and looked at the back, a childlike, innocent smile bloomed across his face. It was pure, uncontainable joy from deep within. Soon, happiness arrived as quietly as the light in his eyes. Love blossomed passionately in this mutual journey. They became inseparable and hand in hand, stepped into the halls of matrimony. Not long after, Poppy gave birth to a son for him. Corey was bright, lively, and adorable, bringing endless joy and hope to the family. Within this cozy little world, they wove the fabric of a beautiful life together, enjoying each other's warmth and companionship. However, fate seemed unwilling to continue favoring them. On this day, Cameron suddenly felt a strange dizziness. He thought it was just discomfort from exhaustion, but when he tried to stand again, the entire world seemed to spin. He struggled with all his might to steady himself, but ultimately lost control and collapsed unconscious. After a series of detailed examinations, he learned he had terminal cancer. This news struck like a bolt from the blue, shattering every beautiful illusion Cameron held about life. Countless times he started to speak, wanting to tell his wife this truth, but each time the words reached his lips, he swallowed them back down. Because he deeply understood his wife's sensitive and fragile heart had already endured too much devastation and pain. He vividly remembered his wife's inconsolable grief when her brother passed away, and he could never forget how, to heal herself, she had secluded herself in her room for a full half-year. Cameron understood his wife's deep value for family bonds and couldn't bear to let her already scarred heart be wounded anew by his departure. So he chose silence, burying his helplessness and fear deep within. Yet his condition continued to worsen. Cameron knew he couldn't hide it for much longer. Every time he saw the happy smiles lighting up his wife's and son's faces, his heart became tightly wound with complex emotions, a melancholy resignation about the present and a profound anxiety about the future. This happiness before him shone brilliantly like morning dew, yet was as fragile as a candle in the wind, liable to be extinguished at any moment by his leaving. In this despair and helplessness, he quietly hid in the shadows, wiped away his tears, and reconsidered Dr. Scott's suggestion to use a clone to extend his life, to replace him in continuing to protect this family. Cameron felt a tumult of conflicting emotions. With an indescribable feeling, he actively sought out Dr. Scott and clearly stated his willingness to accept the clone plan. Facing Cameron's decision, Dr. Scott's face showed genuine admiration, moved by his courage and resolve. Soon after, Cameron had his first meeting with his own clone. He was almost stunned by the sight before him, for it was a being startlingly similar to him. From facial features and build, down to every molecular structure composing his life, it was an exact replica, like a reflection in water. The only distinguishing mark was an extra dark mole on the clone's hand. Although Cameron had pondered it repeatedly beforehand and felt mentally prepared, when he truly faced this clone destined to replace him, unprecedented panic still arose. He couldn't calmly accept this reality. An unspeakable resistance and aversion welled up involuntarily within him. Dr. Scott, keenly noticing Cameron's emotional shift, gently introduced him to another female patient, Kate. Kate was an ordinary product saleswoman. She had a beautiful and adorable daughter. Although her life was completely different from Cameron's, they shared the same fate. That fate was their unwillingness to tell their families the truth as their lives neared the end, instead choosing to have clones replace them to continue loving their families. When Cameron sought out that Kate clone with a hint of skepticism, he was utterly stunned by the sight before him. Kate's clone lived a simple yet fulfilling life just like Kate, but she and her family never knew she was a clone. Most reassuringly, when Cameron quietly observed that Kate clone with her daughter, he saw the very scene he longed for. The Kate clone nurtured her child with selfless love. Every warm moment was like the first ray of winter sunlight piercing through the clouds, warming the heart and filling it with peace. These scenes deeply touched Cameron's heart, stirring a surge of warmth within him. It felt like a premonition that one day his own wife and son could enjoy the same beauty and happiness under the care of his clone. Carrying this beautiful hope, Cameron played video games with his son far away via a video call. On both ends of the screen, the laughter of father and son was like a warm spring breeze. It traversed mountains and rivers, echoing in each other's hearts. Yet a sudden wave of dizziness, like a dark claw from the shadows, ruthlessly pulled Cameron into an endless abyss. Fortunately, just before his consciousness faded completely, he managed to cut the connection, narrowly avoiding his son's discovery. But this experience struck like a heavy hammer, sounding a loud alarm in Cameron's heart. He deeply realized the hourglass of his life had nearly run empty. The time left to him was running critically short. So, with endless concern for his family, he finds Dr. Scott again and urgently asks her to complete the cloning process for him. Under Dr. Scott's meticulous preparation, Cameron began transferring his memories to the clone. As the seat back gently reclined, his consciousness seeped silently into the clone's mind like a trickling stream. Those fragmented life memories, like ancient scrolls lightly brushed by the hand of time, gradually awakened within the clone's awareness. As the transfer progressed, the awkwardness and sweetness of his first meeting with his wife, the warm times shared together after marriage, and the unforgettable moments of their family of 3 flashed through Cameron's mind like a whirlwind. By the time the consciousness transfer was complete, these precious memories became vividly alive in the clone's mind. Just like that, the clone's consciousness miraculously fused with Cameron's soul. Although Dr. Scott immediately informed the clone that he was still a replacement for someone else, the clone showed not a trace of resistance. Instead, he accepted this fact with extraordinary calm, because all of Cameron's memories were deeply imprinted in his mind. The endless love and responsibility for his family, along with the hesitation and struggle about being replaced by a clone, felt as real and profound as if he had lived them himself. However, to truly become Cameron, he still needed some time to adjust. To ensure he could perfectly replace Cameron without revealing any flaws to the family, the clone had to spend time with Cameron. He needed to find the subtle differences between them through the minutiae of daily life. Yet both were astonished to discover their similarity had reached a startling degree. Whether in meticulous habits or a calm, introspective personality, the two were indistinguishable, like mirror images. The only difference was that Cameron's flame of life was about to extinguish, while the clone possessed a healthy body, able to live on in his place. The thought that everything about him would be taken by this suddenly appearing person stirred anger and resentment in Cameron's heart. He even decided to terminate the clone plan, carrying this unresolved complex feeling back to his warm little home. Seeing his bright, adorable son and gentle, virtuous wife, a kind and gentle smile bloomed on his face in that moment. Yet this seemingly ordinary scene pierced his heart like an invisible thorn. He gazed at his family, his eyes gradually moistening. The choice within his heart battered his soul like turbulent ocean waves. He understood his wife and son's happiness absolutely could not be shattered by his selfishness. Perhaps letting the clone replace him and continue this love was the best choice. So when Cameron faced the clone again, his eyes held much more acceptance, and his mood was considerably calmer. They looked at each other. No words were needed. Each clearly understood the responsibility they had to shoulder. After this period of interaction and adjustment, Dr. Scott believed the time was ripe. It was time for a more advanced test. Next, the clone would replace Cameron in a video call with his wife. After the call connected, facing his wife on the screen, the clone was initially a little nervous. But soon he composed himself, gradually immersing into the role he was playing. He chatted and laughed easily with Poppy, sometimes making each other burst into laughter. He even forgot his identity as a clone, as if they were the truly happy couple. Meanwhile, Cameron, watching beside them, felt increasingly unsettled. The thought that everything about him would be stolen by this imposter caused an indescribable surge of anger and jealousy to erupt from deep within. His hands clutched the switch tightly. Ultimately, unable to endure this torment, he forcibly ended the call. This sudden move also angered the clone. Instantly, the atmosphere between them became charged with tension.
You think I like this? Talking to my wife under a spotlight?
She's not your wife!
Oh, okay. Okay, I see. You just can't bear to see this actually work. That's the real problem.
Man.
And what about me? Waking up in this place waiting for you to pull the plug, being told I'm not me.
Because you're not me. You are not me!
Their emotions surged like tidal waves. Sparks flew in their words as they confronted each other head-on, determined to release all their pent-up dissatisfaction and resentment. Yet just as this fierce argument reached its peak, Cameron's illness struck again. The clone suddenly realizes, and a deep sense of guilt washes over him like a tidal wave. He understood he was merely a replacement, but the call with Poppy had immersed him in fleeting warmth, making him momentarily forget this special identity. Then Dr. Scott comforted the clone in a gentle tone, explaining it wasn't his fault. For he not only possessed Cameron's memories, but his emotions and experiences were exactly the same too. From the moment the consciousness transfer was complete, he had already become another Cameron. There was no longer a clear boundary between them. Through this heartfelt emotional collision, they both come to deeply understand that they must learn to find their reflection in each other's eyes and to see their responsibility in each other's pain. When Cameron woke from his coma, the clone proactively apologized to him. Truthfully, both men understood in their hearts they weren't fully prepared for the imminent separation, yet it was destined to become an unchangeable fact. Therefore, a strong impulse surged within Cameron. He decided to risk going home to bid a final farewell to his wife and son. But just as he reached his residence before even entering, a sudden dizziness overwhelmed him. Soon, his body collapsed uncontrollably. He knew the wretched illness had struck again. If his wife discovered this, all their previous preparations would be ruined. So Cameron, on the brink of losing consciousness, forced himself up through the pain and staggered towards the car. Hiding inside, he looked back. His longing gaze pierced through the car window, fixed on his wife so near yet so far, her face like flowers on the distant shore, radiant, yet unreachable. Meanwhile, the clone witnessed this through the lens, his heart clenching with worry for Cameron. But Cameron knew his worsening condition had utterly robbed him of the ability to interact normally with his wife and son. There was little left he could do. To witness the clone successfully taking his place, Cameron proposed the clone immediately go home in his stead. Fortunately, everything progressed smoother than imagined. The wife detected nothing unusual about the clone's arrival. The little home remained filled with warmth and love. Yet at the very moment the clone embraced his wife tightly, the family dog barked furiously nearby. Perhaps in its eyes, the clone could never replace its true master. Luckily, Poppy remained lost in the joy of reunion, not suspecting anything due to the dog's unusual reaction. But the real Cameron could only be an observer now. Through the lens in the clone's eye, he indirectly felt this familial warmth. He gazed affectionately at his wife and son's smiling faces, a faint, relieved smile touching his own lips. Yet this brief joy was soon overshadowed by a deep gloom, for he knew deeply that these moments of happiness, rightfully his, were now an unreachable dream in his heart. From then on, he could only hide silently in the background like a voiceless spectator, quietly witnessing everything. Every interaction between the clone and his family felt like a sharp knife, carving invisible wounds into his heart. He felt regret. He felt pain, but he understood even more that this was unchangeable. All he could do was silently hope the clone could replace him, bringing lasting joy and peace to his family. As time passed, Cameron still noticed unusual signs. He was surprised to find the clone removing the lens more frequently lately. This subtle change stirred doubt within him. Under Dr. Scott's gentle explanation, he learns that this is a sign of the clone's initial difficulty in accepting his tool identity. This phenomenon also signaled the clone was gradually integrating into his new life. Although Cameron felt deep resistance and confusion upon hearing this, the image of his wife and son's warm, happy smiles always surfaced in his mind. He then buried all resentment and dissatisfaction deep down. Ultimately, he chose endurance. He chose to sacrifice his own feelings for the clone so his wife and son could keep their peace and happiness. Yet an undercurrent of unease always stirred deep within, his enduring concern for his wife and son. One late night, Cameron was jolted awake by a nightmare. In it, he saw the clone violently striking his wife because her cooking didn't suit his taste. Sweating coldly, unable to find peace, Cameron decided to sneak out of the hospital to see for himself if his wife and child were safe. But when he enters the house, he doesn't dare to disturb them recklessly. He feared if both he and the clone appeared, all preparations would vanish like smoke. Finally, Cameron cautiously entered the study. He saw exquisite paintings on the desk, created by the clone, radiating peace and tranquility. This brought him some comfort. He knew only someone with a calm mind and stable emotions could create such meaningful masterpieces. Then, moving stealthily, he opened the computer and carefully scrolled through the chat logs between the clone and his wife. The words, filled with deep affection and tender care, evoked a warm current in Cameron's heart. To his relief, the computer also stored cherished videos of the clone spending time with his wife and son, moments unseen in the surveillance footage. Watching these scenes of happiness, Cameron finally realized the clone wasn't the violent tyrant from his dream. Instead, with the same deep affection and loyalty, he had been loving his own wife and son in his place. His worries and confusion dissipated like mist. But just at that moment, the clone suddenly appeared behind him. Cameron's heart tightened. He expected the clone to blame him for his selfishness and recklessness. Yet unexpectedly, the clone's eyes revealed complete understanding and acceptance. He didn't drive Cameron away. Instead, he placed the wedding ring into Cameron's hand and gave him his own pajamas to wear. This was granting Cameron a chance to say goodbye to his wife and son, for only he could understand the pain within the other. But just then, the little dog, hearing the commotion, suddenly appeared before them. Seeing two identical masters confused it for a moment, but ultimately it pretended nothing was wrong and ran out. At this moment, the clone suddenly realized he should hide in the storage room, leaving this precious time for Cameron. Cameron quietly went to his son's room. Though it was late at night, he woke the sleeping child. Then he took him to the living room and poured him a full glass of apple juice. Under the soft light, they toasted while enjoying some snacks. The clone, hiding in the shadows, silently watched all this. An indescribable sympathy for Cameron welled up within him. He deeply knew these seemingly ordinary everyday moments were so precious yet painfully unreachable for Cameron. The sun's radiant smile, like a ray of winter sunshine, warmed Cameron's heart. Yet it was also a sharp, double-edged sword, bringing boundless joy while deeply piercing him. Cameron gazed intently at his son's smiling face, his eyes filled with love and regret. He understood he couldn't personally experience every step of his son's growth. He wouldn't witness him entering university, nor stand by his side to see him marry and become a father. He could only celebrate, in this way, every joyful milestone in his son's life ahead of time. Corey didn't know this was his father's final goodbye. Soon he drifted back to sleep. After seeing his son asleep, Cameron went to his wife's room. Poppy, seeing his tear-streaked face, suddenly became tense. Cameron forced a smile, weaving a lie for Poppy. He said he'd had a nightmare where he lost everything he possessed. Poppy, heart aching, pulled him tightly into her embrace, softly comforting him. Then Cameron asked his wife if she was happy with her life now. Without hesitation, she answered yes. A genuine smile spread across Cameron's face, his heart finally settling. He knew the clone hadn't just made up for his regrets, he had perhaps done even better than he could. Then Cameron gently held his beloved, letting tears of farewell stream continuously down his cheeks. Silently, deep within his heart, he offered his deepest apologies to his love for the escape chosen out of fear and confusion, and for the unintentional distance during this time. Poppy nestled in his warm embrace. Her breathing gradually became steady and deep, and finally, she fell peacefully asleep. Cameron returned to the car and solemnly placed that ring of profound significance into the clone's hand. This act was not only trust in this other self, but also the unconditional entrusting of the responsibility to protect his family to this being who shared his appearance and memories. At this moment, words were unnecessary. Cameron knew the clone would cherish his wife and son with all his love, just as he would. Finally, they shook hands firmly. This was not just a silent farewell, but a mutual reconciliation and release. The two Camerons reached an understanding. They each bore different missions, yet together they guarded the same home. As the car slowly drove into the distance, they completely exited each other's lives, yet left love and hope forever in each other's hearts. Soon after, Dr. Scott told Cameron that the clone's memories of being cloned had been completely erased, and now he was the Cameron from before the illness. Cameron heard this without much stir, for this was exactly the outcome he desired. Dr. Scott told Cameron that before deleting the memories, the clone had specifically left a gift for him. That was a video recording, and moreover, an eternal testament to his wife's deep affection for him.
I love you, Cameron Turner. Always have. And always will. How's that?
That was good.
Witnessing the unreserved and unwavering love in his wife's eyes, Cameron felt an unprecedented wave of solace wash over him. He understood this love belonged solely to him. No one could ever take it away. Yet the wheel of fate rolled relentlessly forward. Not long after, Cameron's journey of life gently drew to a close. His departure was like the falling of a star, deeply regrettable. In his final moments, he chose a silent farewell. This wasn't an escape from death, but a way for love to continue in another form. Cameron traded his most hidden sacrifice for his family's complete happiness. His presence might vanish, but his love endured eternally in this special way. This was the deepest protection and the greatest fulfillment. Cameron's story teaches us that love is not just companionship. It is also the willingness to let go, allowing loved ones to continue shining. His sacrifice was not an end, but the starting point of another kind of life. Because of love, he chose to become a shadow, yet let the light forever illuminate his family's future.